How's it going, everyone? Today, we are fortunate to have the incredible Marc Mero join the Spirit Talk podcast. If you're fans of wrestling like myself, I started following Mark's career back in WWE when he's Intercontinental Champion, and then WCW with I'm going to say iconic Johnny B. Good character, Johnny B. Bad. And I want to talk about that. But you're also the founder of Champions of Choices, an incredible motivational speaker, an author, and the work you do for children, whether it's with suicide or anti-bullying or the impact of drugs and alcohol in someone's life. It's amazing to see you have this great sport career, but it's almost like your purpose is to do what you're doing now, it's just incredible.
Thanks for having me on your show today, man. I'm looking forward to, discussing this and just being kind of an open book about what's going on with our youth today, with our country, with our lives. I think there's no greater joy than helping another person. So hopefully this podcast will help a lot of people.
I love that. And let's kind of jump into 2020. I think was a wash in terms of scheduling and all sorts of what we're used to. And one of the things where I found to really appreciate what you do is when you go to these schools to talk to kids and you share these emotional videos of parents of kids that are dealing with loss or suicidal thoughts. But that kind of went away because of COVID. And now you had a whole other issue on your hand where kids that are at home that are dealing with now abuse possibly, or drug use, or the fear of not seeing their friends. Can you kind of touch upon how the year 2020 affected your mindset going forward?
Our last live event was March 12th of 2020. And then after that, everything canceled. Now, this is going from a guy that's averaging 230 events a year for the last 14 years, been on the road all the time, and all of a sudden it completely stops. So obviously we got to bounce back, reinvent yourself. And we started doing virtual events. Now, obviously, I love being there in person to meet students after the presentation and talk with them, but we're getting more and more letters than we've ever received now from students that are going through isolation, loneliness, depression, anxiety, even being bullied online more.
Right.
And now we're seeing so many kids that just feel like there's no hope. And the suicide rate is the absolute highest it's ever been. And, I got parents reaching out to me all the time, and we're trying to do as much as possible to help these kids. And I believe we are. I mean, we're doing what we can do. I got to say, the thing I really noticed that needs to happen is we see all this money going out for stimulus and everything else. But the thing they're lacking is in schools, we have like a counselor that can, help us with classes or
right.
what we're going to, but we need mental health specialists at our schools. Until we start having mental health specialists, not one for a whole school district. I'm talking about every school should have mental health specialists that help these kids navigate the things that they're going through, the relevant issues that they're dealing with today, and especially with the depression, the isolation from this COVID.
How did you, when you first started this, and it's interesting that here you are on the road, and back in wrestling, you guys were always on the road, so you kind of carried over that kind of working mentality. But when you first started doing this stuff, talking to these kids in these schools, was it a lot of extra weight baggage you had to carry? Like, how did you process all these stories you hear and not take them to the next school?
It's amazing that you asked that. Is a lot of people don't realize that the heartache that you take on by dealing with student after student with the depression or anxiety or suicidal thoughts that you're trying to keep just hanging on for another minute, another hour, another day. It does weigh on you a lot. I'm going to be totally honest. I went through a divorce a little over a year and a half ago. Never in my life thought I'd get divorced, but went through that, and just being on the road all the time and dealing with a lot of taking on a lot of pain, I guess, but I realized my calling in life. Unfortunately, I lost many family members. I lost my little brother and sister, died at 21. My mom died at 58. My dad died while I was holding him in my arms. And losing so many friends and family members has really gave me the appreciation for life and not wanting other people to go through pain maybe that I went through, especially with drug addiction or depression and anxiety and things that suicidal thoughts, stuff that I went through that I can relate to what other people go through. But man, somehow surviving all these, weaving my way through the ups and downs in life and getting to where I'm at now, a beautiful place that, like I said, there's no greater joy than helping another person.
You share your thoughts and feelings and the issues you go through, whether it's divorce or the past drug use. And so that must be a comfort to these kids or even the parents who are looking for someone to be like, hey, don't be afraid of your failures. Don't be afraid of what you've succumbed to. You could be better tomorrow morning. And so do you feel that you have to, when you have a bad day, Marc Mero, how do you kind of get out of that funk to carry on?
It's amazing that you asked that. We all have good days and bad days,
right.
But I got to tell you, I guess you would say I couldn't say it was a whole bad day because I really count my blessings in life. I just think of all the great things that I have there. And there's always someone else out there that are struggling to survive. And I think about, I got a beautiful home. I got a roof over my head. I got food. I got everything that I could ever imagine in life. So when something bad happens, sure, you're a little disappointed, maybe depressed for a little while, but then, man, I seem to snap out of it very quickly now. And it often comes by helping someone else.
I'm in the entertainment industry where I do security for bands and celebrities, and obviously the last year affected that. And one of the things I noticed is that there were a lot of people that would post. These are good friends or people I don't really associate with, but I know them, and they're very negative. They're very down on themselves. And I have found that, like you said perfectly, I can have bad days, whether it's mental, physical, caring for a sick parent, or an issue with a friend that's really sick or needs help. But the minute I kind of feel where I'm like, oh man, this day sucks, I'm like, you know what? I could be a 10-year-old girl or kid or whatever in Dana-Farber dying of cancer right now, and they have the exact opposite mindset I have right now. So for me to kind of process that, I kind of woke it up to the idea of, yeah, it's okay to have a bad day on paper, but your day's not that bad.
Yeah. I just lost a friend to COVID the other day, and he left behind 3 little kids.
That's sad.
My friend was on a ventilator, while I'm able to, travel or go do the things that I love doing in life. And I'm going to let something, negative affect my whole day. And here's this person just struggling to survive. So I can put it in a different perspective very quickly in my life. And I hope to bring that to other people. And sometimes we often take for granted the very things in life we should appreciate. And many times it's the love of our family and close friends and people that we really cherish.
And I hate harping about it, but I always get thinking too, like you've shared a video, was probably one of your first ones, about you talking about your parents and your mom, and it's so emotional. And I don't know you in that sense where here's someone I watched wrestling or I know about his boxing or all this other stuff, but it's like, here's a guy that just like me has parents that, unfortunately, my parents are both alive, but I'd see come to a point where they get older or sick, and I'm going to be this guy, and I'm going to be an emotional wreck. And how do I act like a Marc Mero where I can process this and use it to help others? It's just whenever you started putting that stuff out there, your relationships with your family and loved ones, was it tough to make it that personal for you to show other people?
It's strange because every time, doing now thousands of presentations around the world, often see many people in the audience crying, openly weeping. And that seems to get to me more than me telling my story. But see, the reason why the story is so authentic is because I actually go back in time while I'm telling the story, and I actually picture me walking up to her casket and looking down and seeing her for the first time. It brings back this a raw emotional just sadness or emotion that that people can really relate to. And like you said, I can't imagine, losing your parents, and I think the thing that really helps me to overcome or get by it, because there's nothing wrong with mourning, and some people have to mourn longer than others. But there's a time where you got to get on with your life. And I often think back about what would my parents think if they just saw me depressed all the time. They'd be like,
Right.
Mark, get your butt up and get out there, So, first of all, I know that from beyond, they're very proud of me and my accomplishments and helping other people. I became the man my mom always prayed I would be.
Right.
So knowing that, it really helps me to move on in life, and knowing we're all going to lose a loved one, all of us. I mean, that's the circle of life. Unfortunately, that's the way it goes. But it's to move on from that and to know that your parents or loved ones would never want you to constantly be depressed or constantly mourning, and to move on and get on with life, enjoy life, live a victorious life.
Right. And when I don't know if you usually get asked this question, but I'm kind of curious. When you go into a different school and say it's a Christian school or a Jewish school, or this is a group of kids that are atheist, is it tough for you to put, like, what if someone comes up to you and they're like, well, I don't, like, why do I pray? Or do you ever come across where religion could interfere in getting this message across for you?
Well, when I talk at a Christian school, obviously I could share my faith.
Correct.
I've spoken to Jewish schools where I can talk about God, but they have a little different take. Obviously, Jewish is much different than Christian,
Right.
and but when I talk in a public school, we don't share anything about religions because you can't. And if you do, you will not be able to go to other
Right.
schools because it would stop it right there. So you got to weigh that, on your presentation. But certain schools want me to talk more about bullying or depression, or when I speak to soldiers, they want me to talk about suicide prevention. So there's different topics that we can go to. But when I speak at churches, I love it because I can really share my faith and what really changed my life.
When you talk to these different groups, do you have to prepare mentally? Say it is veterans with PTSD, or Christian school, or Mothers Against Drunk Driving, or something like this, where it's like, do you prepare yourself differently in terms of mindset leading into this?
You know what I mean? Obviously, pain is pain, and
Right.
it's just people process it differently. From Mothers Against Drunk Driver to Alcoholics Anonymous, or whatever it could be. You're talking to people that have gone through pain or addiction in life, and I can understand it. I mean, it's part of my story. Through our struggles, we find our strength, and that's my message that I try to get across people, is that we all go through this. Every one of us has gone through something that has forever changed their life. But did it change it for the better, or did it change it for the worse? We can take these tragedies and turn them into triumphs, by helping other people.
When you're very open and candid about your past drug use and painkillers and stuff, especially being on the road with the wrestling, but what was the event that kind of set you on this path to do what you're doing now when it came to the speaking about, hey, drugs are bad?
Well, it was 2003 where I got to the point where depression and losing family members, going through a divorce, it was like the perfect storm in my life.
Right.
The financial, the housing, everything that could go wrong went wrong in my life. And I just remember that I didn't want to be here anymore. And I retrieved my handgun. I was ready just to end it all.
Wow.
If it wasn't for me just falling to my knees and asking God to change my life, to give me a purpose, give me hope. And it was at that point, 2003. So it's 18 years. I've never touched a drug in 18 years, which
awesome.
What a blessing. And not even going through rehab. And not that, please don't get this wrong. I mean, I commend people that go through rehab or
100%.
AA or whatever it is that's needed. And it's such a blessing to see these people overcome addiction. Mine was a spiritual awakening in my life. And I knew that God gave me a second chance. And I mean, I've overdosed on drugs on 3 occasions where I should be dead. And getting this second chance, I realized that if I even touch a drug, I believe I would die. I do. I just believe that in my heart that that would be the end of Marc Mero. And I don't want to leave that as my legacy. I don't want my legacy to be, dying of drug overdose or how much money I made or how big my
Right.
house was or what kind of cars I drove. I want my legacy to be the difference I was able to make in someone else's life. That someone to hear my name and go, man, that guy changed my life, or his story really helped me or inspired me. That's what I want my legacy to be.
I know you do workouts, you're good friends with Diamond Dallas Page, but it's so interesting to me to see someone like yourself with what you're doing, where Diamond Dallas Page was, you're becoming bigger than wrestling. I guess it's kind of what you just mentioned, where it's like your legacy is you're still building this incredible legacy, and for you guys, yourself and Diamond and others to go out there and do this other higher calling, it's pretty powerful stuff.
DDP and I are very close friends, and we have a lot of fun together because it's like we out inspire each other. we have a lot. We really do have a great time, and it's so funny when you look at our careers. I started wrestling when I was 30. I signed my first contract at 31 years old. He didn't start till he was 35. I won Rookie of the Year. He won Rookie of the Year. I won Most Improved Wrestler. He won Most Improved Wrestler. Then after wrestling, he takes his DDP yoga to a level that's helping so many people, saving lives, changing lives. I took my school program, took it all over the world, and so we both are just living, I don't know if you call it a dream or call it just the joy we found in our lives. We both love helping other people. And so I actually moved close to him now. I just moved to Atlanta about 3 months ago.
Love
it. So I'm real close to him. So we've been doing some of the DDP yoga together and having some fun. But it's cool just to be able to call him up or text him or see him whenever I'm around or he's around, which is really great.
When you get around other wrestlers that you've wrestled with or your contemporaries and stuff like that, is there ever a sense of, or has it ever happened where that a wrestler be like, hey, I got a kid, a daughter, a son that's going through some issues, like, could you talk to them? Like, do you still have those relationships with your people you've wrestled with or gone against where they're like, hey, Mark, could you help me out here? Like, because they know you were on the road with them. They went through the same pratfalls, but you have a way, whether it's your voice or your vision, to build this idea that you can help others. Like, has that ever happened?
It's amazing. This has happened so many times, and it's not happened so much that someone I wrestled with called me or something. It's that I've spoken in so many schools that I hear from them after. They go, "Oh my God, you changed my son or daughter's life." They can't stop talking about you. So that has been cool. But I have been asked personally to talk on the phone or call or see one of the guys that I wrestle with, son or daughter. Just recently, just last week, Brad Armstrong, who passed on in 2012, his wife and daughter came over to my house to meet me. And, she was only 11 years old when her dad passed on, but I got to share stories about her dad that it put the biggest smile on her face. And she even wrote to me, she said, I'm so glad to hear those stories about my dad, because Brad was a great guy. He was a locker room comedian. People loved being around him. He was always upbeat. He was always helping people. And he was the guy, when I first got into wrestling, I was very green. I didn't really know the difference between a wristwatch and a wrist lock. So, and Brad, unfortunately, Brad had to be the guy that goes on the road with me to teach me how to wrestle. But he was just so much fun and a great guy. And so I got to share stories with her about her dad, and that was really something I always remember.
You have this, I would say, probably a really great boxing background. And so when you were doing the boxing in New York State and everything, you said you go to wrestling at the age of 30. And when you start training under the Malenko family, like, is it tough to transition from that type of fighter athlete to, you're still athletes, but it's a little bit different here? Like, you must have had a couple of instances where you threw a straight punch or something like that.
Well, I got to tell you, kind of a funny story was that Arn Anderson was another guy I loved to wrestle. He is really one of the most underrated and probably one of the top 5 guys I've ever.
Yes.
He's just that good, we were wrestling in a, I don't think it might have been one of the pay-per-views or something, but our referee was Nick Anderson, and we Nick separates us or something. I had him in the corner and I was sitting with some shots, and Nick, separates us. And he's and a lot of times in wrestling, the referee gives you instructions, which helps you get through the match,
Right.
And Nick said to me, he said, Arn told me to tell you, hit him as hard as you can in the face. And I'm like, what? And he goes, then he goes, because he told me to tell you your working punch is killing him. So in other words, the punch that I was supposed to be pulling is going to kill him. So
I love that.
And get it over with. Anyways, it was just, he had that sense of humor, and man, I learned a lot from Arn Anderson. I can't say enough good things about him. And one of the best storytellers too. Fun guy in the locker room, man. He could tell a story and have the straightest face. It could be the funniest thing you've ever heard.
I love that. Now, I mentioned before, but I actually learned about Johnny Be Good after seeing your portrayal of Johnny Be Bad. So how does that kind of come about where you get this? Who writes that character for you? How do you make that character as good as it was? Like, I don't think anyone else could have really carried that character like you did.
It was a brainchild of Dusty Rhodes, who, when he first saw me, told me I looked like Little Richard, and he had a gimmick for me. But when he told me that the name was Precious, that was the name he had for this, Precious. I was like, oh man, I don't like that name, I would call Precious, So I went back and looked on, songs from the 50s, the Little Richard. And of course there was that song, Johnny Be Good. Wasn't a Little Richard song, but there was a song, Johnny Be Good. So I thought, well, cool. I knew it was going to be a bad guy to start with. So why not be Johnny Be Bad and use B-A-D-D, which I got from Diamond Dallas Page. And that's where the name came from, as the wrestler Johnny Be Bad. And I liked that a heck of a lot. And I remember telling Dusty when I said, hey, Dust, do you mind if I use a different name than Precious? And he goes, what you got? And I go, what do you think of Johnny Be Bad? He goes, he looks up and he goes, I like it. I think, thank you, Lord.
You were fortunate to have a WWE, WF, WCW, TNA. When people are jumping ship like that, I assume the Brotherhood of Sisterhood is still, and not about jumping ship. I mean, everyone, I get it, but is there that Brotherhood Sisterhood, is that always there, or does the company you work for kind of manufacture this? Oh, you got to be Team WB, you got to be WCW. Like, how do you guys kind of filter through that kind of like garbage?
The boys are the boys. It's funny because when you say that Brotherhood, I think it's stronger now than ever. It's like guys that maybe I didn't talk too much or weren't very close to when I wrestled are now, like, when you see them, you hug them. It's like the memories and the something you experience together. I'll give you an example. Stone Cold Steve Austin was probably one of the best guys I've ever worked with. I mean, he was phenomenal. I love working with him because we always had really good matches, and he was a great ring general. And but I was never close to him. I've never, we never shared a ride, or never, didn't say much to each other. But always had good matches and respected each other, And it was after wrestling that I was asked to do his podcast. And I did his podcast. And after the podcast, we probably stayed on the phone for, 45 minutes to an hour, just reminiscing, talking about life, And I thought,
right,
wow, what a great guy, and I mean, he's so proud of what I do. And we just had a great conversation. And it's like, when I see him again or talk to him again, it's going to be nothing but love, man, and it comes from that I don't know, that camaraderie that you've always had, and maybe didn't even realize how strong it was. But anytime I go to these wrestling reunions or WrestleCons or something where I'm doing an autograph signing and there's all the other wrestlers there, it's like, man, I love going from table to table and seeing everybody, and everybody's hugging and shaking hands. And, it's almost like people just bury the hatchet, man. And, maybe some hold grudges, which is foolish, because you can't live your life with bitterness, resentment, anger, or unforgiveness. You just can't.
When a wrestler passes, and I'm referring to someone like in my head. I remember growing up, and I'm like, when the wrestler Tess passed away, I'm kind of like, I understood death obviously, and I didn't understand like the drug use and stuff like that. So when individuals die like that, does it make you kind of wonder why you came to the crossroads you did and how they weren't helped or saved? Like that must wear on you just a little bit.
Well, there's certain guys that obviously you're closer with than others that pass on, and some guys you don't even know that well, but we're in the business with you at the same time. But there were some that really hit you hard. I mean, gosh, I'll never forget. Brian Pillman is one guy. I've had one of
Oh
my
yeah.
matches with in Fall Brawl. I mean, just a phenomenal match with that guy. And here he is. We're doing a pay-per-view, and he was found dead in his hotel room, and it just affected all of us in a like, wow. I mean, that could happen to any one of us. And Eddie Guerrero, one of
Yeah.
my favorite people ever in wrestling. He loved Eddie Guerrero. I mean, he used to come and he'd pray with me before the matches. Just just a shock, when he passed on, and I don't know, it just really it does affect you, and you often look up and say, why not me? Why didn't I
Right.
die? And now I realize how close I was to death, on those occasions where I was overdosed, and where all this never would have happened. All the schools, all the people we've helped or changed or even saved never would have happened if God took me home early, I guess.
Now you've been accustomed to large crowds from Madison Square, and I think of the biggest crowds. Do you still, or what is the rush you get now? Is it walking out on the auditorium floor and seeing these kids? Like, is it like how is it the same type of rush, or is this a better rush?
Well, the good news is I've wrestled in front of 80,000 people, the Alamo
Right.
Dome. And the good news is I still get to go out there and entertain people, but no one's hit me over the head with a chair anymore.
Yeah, true.
Good. But it's funny because when I first started doing schools, high school, middle school kids are the toughest critics in the world. Okay, so
Right.
I was more nervous walking out to a high school auditorium than I was walking out to 80,000 people at the Alamo Dome. It was but now it's so much fun. I think what's so cool now is so many of the students that know I'm coming to their school, because they have signed releases that the parents have to sign, those school signs
Yep.
when a speaker comes in, and many will look me up, or they've already seen my YouTube videos, so they're always really excited. So the reception I get now is really cool. It's always fun now. I mean, there's a nervousness, but the excitement is even more for me now. And I tell you, I never call in a match, so to speak. I mean, when I go out there and speak to these kids, I give it my all. I really dig down deep, knowing I can make a difference in their lives, and I think the kids see that. They see that they can ask me any questions. We have questions and answers at the end, and woof, man, you wouldn't believe some
Right.
questions that students will ask you, and be very honest about what they're going through, and even thanking you in front of their whole school for changing. Or even one student, well, I should say this many times, have said, I believe you saved my life today. And the whole crowd will start clapping for that person. It's
I love
incredible.
that. It's got to be very interesting where these children's parents, they grew up watching you or fans of you, but here you are now affecting their kids. It's like it's just, again, man, I just can't stress enough how cool it is to see you doing what you do and just helping and affecting all these different generations of people. It's very empowering.
Well, I tell you, I don't know if you call it finding my calling in life. I mean, when I'm on my deathbed, I look back on my life. This will be the greatest times I've ever had. Was able to, go to schools and make a difference, or churches or corporations or wherever it was. I even spoke at the FBI convention.
Wow, that's
2,500
awesome.
FBI agents. And inspiring them, and seeing the emotion involved in that presentation was incredible.
Now, before I let you go, Mark, where can people kind of find you on social media, Champions
Well,
of Choices, the website, stuff like that?
yeah. First of all, our website is thinkpoz, which is POZ.org. Or you can go to YouTube and just type in the Marc Mero on YouTube. And if you go to Facebook, it's Marc Mero page. It's Marc Mero's already been taken, so I have to use all these other things, So Marc Mero page on Facebook, and then at Marc Mero on Instagram and Twitter. And Marc is with a C, MarcMero. And I'd love to hear from someone that heard us on your show. So please, if you do write to me or reach out to me, tell me you heard me on this show, okay?
Awesome, Marc. Thank you. Be safe and continue doing your incredible work and saving lives. And it means the world to me that you jumped on here today.
Thank you for having me, and God bless you, and God bless your listeners. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Marc. How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spear Talk. You might not know this, but before I record an episode, I like to break a sweat. And I do that using the Chop Fit. Over the course of the past year, the Chop Fit has allowed me to lose weight, tone up my body, and feel even more amazing about myself. A feeling that you should all feel about yourself as well. If you use this code, SpearChop10, you get $10 off your order. Once again, use code SpearChop10 for $10 off your Chop Fit order. It'll change your life. Thank you.